It is 5 o'clock on the West Coast, 8 o'clock on the East Coast, where my buddy Stuart Leviton is. He's a Jewish historian and just a super smart dude. And to tell you a little bit something about him that I have not brought up because we're kind of talking about important topics, but his background is really fascinating, especially if you're a fan. I'm a child of the 80s. My first job in radio was K-pop 93.5. I was a screaming 7 to midnight top 40 DJ. And I'll never forget the first time I played Twisted Sister on the radio. Loud, in your face. And I'm screaming over the end, K-pop 93.5. We're not going to take it. It was awesome. And this guy, Stuart Leviton, was in that band. You also played with Cyndi Lauper and who
Yeah,
else?
I had a group called Samantha, and the rock scene in the late 70s, early 80s here in New York, on Long Island, the tri-state area was huge. So you had people again like Dee with Twisted Sister, Cyndi Lauper had a group called Blue Angel. You had Zebra, had come up and they were playing the circuit here. Steve Stevens was in a group called One Hand Clap. He's the guitar player for Billy Idol. A friend of mine, Alan Levy, or Alan St. John is the stage name that he used. He was in a group called Swift Kick. And then he started playing with Michael Bolton, who also was from Long Island. And then he went on to being the keyboardist with Billy Squire. So, I mean,
Really?
Yeah, that's Alan.
See, that's awesome, man. That's great. And you were right there in the middle of it. What did you play? I was in the middle of
it all, working 6 nights a week, which was unbelievable. Hair down to here, and it was. We used to play.
Look at him now.
Yeah, look at me now, God. But no, those were great times and a lot of great people. So
how could it not be?
Yeah.
While you were making that music, I was actually playing it on the radio, and we were synergistically working together. It was a great time in radio where musicians actually supported DJs and vice versa.
And they played their instruments.
We were helping each other. We were helping each other do better and get more ears. And more eyes and more people in seats at the concerts, or standing up in their seats, or standing up because they can't sit down because they're so engaged with the music. That was amazing. The 80s was great. I lived like a rock star, but enough of that.
Okay.
Enough of that, because we're talking about serious stuff. But I just wanted to share that because this is your third time that we've done this. Third time you've been on the air with me, and what we're talking about is the history of Israel and especially how this whole thing started was because I got sick and tired of hearing people talk about, well, why is Israel so important to us? It's only been around since 1948.
Wow.
Are you that completely ignorant? Yes, apparently they are. These are Christians, by the way, saying this kind of stuff. I'm like, you never even opened a Bible. You're talk about a Chino, Christian in name only. You have no idea. Read the word. So that's where Stuart and I started. Our mutual friend, Pastor Michael Baggett from Principles to Live By. He is the one that said, Charlie, there's this guy in New York, and he can answer a lot of your questions in a way that's actually a whole lot smarter and makes sense as opposed to how you explain things, Charlie. So that's how this whole thing started. And now I'm hooked, man. This is our third week doing this. We're talking about the history of Israel, where it is then and now, and what could possibly be in the future. We know what's going to be in the future because of God's word.
Correct.
Unfortunately, now I'm a follower of Christ Jesus. You're traditional Jewish. You are Orthodox, as they say. And you don't know the New Testament. You don't really follow the New Testament, but in Revelation, everything's really spelled out. Here's what's going to happen. Are we at that point right now? Now you have in the Torah, which we call the Old Testament. In the Torah, though, there's all kinds of places where it predicts end times and what's going to happen with Israel, doesn't it?
Correct. Yes. Well, very importantly, what I was going to say was the book of Daniel. When people talk about the end of days and end of times, people, it's become like a movie scene. They don't understand that God again, being infinite, where we're finite creatures, so he's on a completely different level of understanding and thinking than we are. But he basically, it's like a baseball game. You start with the first inning, it goes to the ninth inning, and then game over. So people, today they don't think about it in a religious capacity. They're looking at things secularly, and they're like, well, these are just random events that are happening. But God said, and especially again going back to Daniel, he says it'll be for times and a half. And at the end of that, he would start again the world anew. Not that he was destroying it, but that people would wake up and understand that God is in control of everything. Right now, these politicians want us to think they're in control. They're the ones who are making the decisions, and we are the sheep that just basically follow along with what we're told to do. And if you don't like it, shut up. I mean, when I heard Carl Schwab say by 2030, he says,
You will
you'll
own
own
nothing,
nothing, and you'll
and you
be
will
happy.
like it,
Yeah,
and you'll
you'll
be
be
happy
happy.
too.
So
Yeah.
the first question I had was, so if I don't own it, who will?
Who does own it?
Right, who will own it? Okay, so but that
Right.
it's not a conversation I could actually have with him. But
And you notice
th-
he said you will own nothing. He didn't say
right,
we. We will
well,
all
yeah,
own nothing.
of course, that's the key. So again, when you look at this times and a half, it's a very important structure for understanding that everything that's playing out is preordained. So at that time, Nebuchadnezzar and the kingdom of Babylon had conquered Israel and basically brought them into exile. This was the first exile of the Jewish kingdom. So what happened was he had seen a vision and didn't understand it. And when he was talking to all of his, magicians or all the people around him that would fortune tell, he says, listen, what I want you to do is you tell me my dream, and then you tell me what it means. And they all looked at each other and looked at him and said, we can't tell you what your dream was, but if you tell us what the dream was, then we can tell you what it means. He goes, no way. Because back then people don't understand like what happened in Egypt. Everyone knew what happened, like with Joseph and the Pharaoh. All these people knew everything that was going on. They make it seem like the same 50 people went around the world. The world had, millions of people back then,
Right.
So
Thousands
so
of years apart.
of course. So basically, Nebuchadnezzar says, if you don't do this, I'm going to kill you all, and basically I'm going to tear down your house and make it into a pile of rubble. So they were all panicking. And then they went to Daniel and said to him and his three friends, he says, why are you panicking? And they're like, the king has said either this or that, we're all dead meat. So Daniel said, give me a day, give me a little bit. And he prayed to God, and God showed him Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and then God showed him the answer. So he went to Nebuchadnezzar, and I'm bringing this up because this is going to equate to today. So he says to Nebuchadnezzar, he goes, you were laying in your bed, and you saw a statue, and you looked at the statue, and you were amazed. And then as you were looking at this statue, a rock came out, cut out, with no hands, struck the statue on its feet, and the whole statue collapsed. And then the rock turned into a huge mountain that would be forever. So he says, now this is what it means. He goes, as you looked at the statue, it had a head of gold, arms and chest of silver, belly and thigh of bronze, legs of iron,
And
feet.
the feet were made of the absolute strongest substance of all to give it all kinds of security, right?
Right, the iron and clay.
Clay.
Iron and clay.
I was kidding. No,
I
they
know
were
you
made of
were. I
clay.
know you knew what I was talking about, which is good. That's fun. So basically, then a rock was cut out with no hands, and then again, the same. Don't want to be repetitive. Boom, right, and it hits her on its
From the
feet.
creator of the universe. That's the
Right,
ultimate fastball.
absolutely. So what happens is he says to Nebuchadnezzar, he goes, "Now I'll tell you what it means." So these are the different kingdoms that were going to arise in the world. Okay, they were going to again perpetuate the exile of the Jews, but they were also going to control the world and basically bring it down. Now, again, one of the things about Nebuchadnezzar was that he went insane and basically went out into the fields and ate grass.
He didn't
And
go insane. He was made to go insane.
right, well, yes, well, of course, everything is he was definitely made to go insane, and
It's not like
that's
all
what,
of a sudden he
no, that's
he
what
ate
it says in
something
the
bad.
Bible. Yeah, that's what it says.
Right.
It said. I'm always amazed because Nebuchadnezzar, in the Jewish religion, we hate him because he destroyed the temple and he took people in exile. But there's actually a chapter written by him when he talks about how he came out of this insanity when he understood that everything is
Yeah.
controlled by God.
Yeah.
So getting back to the statue, so the head was gold, and God said, "That is you. That's the kingdom of Babylon." He goes, "After the kingdom of Babylon, there will be two kingdoms, and they will conquer Babylon, but they will be inferior," which I thought was very interesting because we look at ourselves and we say, "Oh, we're the best there's ever been." But in God's eyes, Babylon was the head of gold. The next two kingdoms were silver. Now, again, two arms. It doesn't say it looks like a human, so we don't know what it looked like. But two arms connected by the chest. So you had the Medes and the Persians. So they were the ones who conquered after Babylon. And then after that
By the
was,
way, side
yeah,
note, who are the Persians and who are the Medes today?
you have the Persians are the Iranians, and the Medes, I don't know. I think it would be more like in Iraq or the Kurdistan, those people. But the
Right.
Persians, I mean, up until the 30s, they called themselves Persians, and then they started calling themselves Aryans, hence the name Iran.
Mm.
So from there, go
So
ahead.
the arms, now we get to the chest. Chest was
No,
that was
we
the
get
arms.
that was the chest. So the next step
Gold
is
head, silver arms.
and chest, because the two arms are joined. They right. So the Medes and the Persians, they were together conquering Babylon. Then you have the belly and thigh are bronze, and then when it reaches its peak, it splits, right? Like two legs split. So that was Greece, and that was Alexander the Great. Because as soon as Alexander reached his peak, he died, and the empire was split amongst his generals. So you had Ptolemy in Egypt, you had Lysimachus in Thrace, you had Seleucus in Asia. It's so basically God said before it happened, this is what's going to happen. Now the next interesting part is you have two legs of iron. So he says this kingdom will be like a steamroller. It will crush like iron. It'll crush everything that was before it.
That's
So
Rome.
that Rome. Now, again, people don't remember because they don't read their history books. But if you remember at one point, because people say, what are the two legs? Rome. There were two kingdoms. You had the Roman Catholic on one side, and then you had the Byzantine with its capital in Constantinople, which is now, again, in Turkey. That's Istanbul, was Constantinople. So
Istanbul,
that
not Constantinople.
right. There you go. So basically, you had two legs. So again, God is explaining. I mean, it's very accurate. So then you go down to the feet of iron and clay, and then whatever that kingdom is, people were all saying, well, that's going to be the new Roman Empire. I think when you and I were growing up, there was a lot of consternation as far as who is that? Where is that? What is that empire? But it doesn't say who that empire is. It doesn't say it in the book of Daniel. But I have my theory, which you and I have discussed before. And then when that empire is there, a stone comes out, which is God, and it hits the statue on its feet. everything crumbles and the
At
mountain
its
grows.
weakest point, at its
Yeah,
absolute weakest point.
yeah.
So you don't think the feet are the USA, huh?
No, no. The feet, again, as you and I had talked about. Now, I think again, clay also being weak, but also what is Adam? The name Adam was given to him because he was made out of earth. He was made out of clay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's partially iron, partially clay. So again, what would you call the bottom of of a statue?
The base
So the base or the foundation. Now,
foundation.
I thought very interestingly, and again, this is what I would say is my theory, but when I went after 9/11, where we were all devastated, and basically this war between us and radical Islam started. Al Qaeda means the base or the foundation for Islam. Now, I said to myself, there's no way Obama, Osama bin Laden picked a Jewish prophecy to name his organization.
Nice little slip, Obama.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, Osama,
But
Osama.
Osama, yes. So, again, I really believe that, again, these are the times where we're living in that at this juncture, this is because what's going on in Israel is not going to stop. One of the things that we're taught is that you can't put an end to this terror. You can't put an end to the way things are going.
They can
So,
stall it by actually eradicating and getting rid of Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, just like Al Qaeda or ISIS or any of the other ones of nutbags who,
but they're all over the world.
huh?
They're all over the world.
Yes. But, well, exactly. That's why I'm saying you can delay it,
Right.
which is what Israel's trying to do right now. Okay, we've had enough of this. You people, you had a chance. We gave you a really nice strip of land, a couple of them. We even gave you the Temple Mount, for heaven's sake, and you still just whine all the time. And you get goofballs like Yasser Arafat. They're not Palestinians, by the way. We're going to address that again. That drives me crazy. And
Hmm.
I'm hearing pastors calling them Palestine, Palestinians. There is no such thing. Stop saying
No,
that. You sound like an idiot. Stop saying that. These are people who were displaced after the First World War when borders were restructured and they were
correct.
basically Jordanians, right?
Well, that again, the name of the two gentlemen was Sykes and Picard. Sykes was from England and Picard was from France, and they divvied up what was then the Ottoman Empire, which had been around since again around 1600. So they divided everything up amongst the spoils go to the winner, and they created all of these different nations, which again created a lot of the problems also. But what you're looking at is, as you said, they can stall it, but that's part of what is going on. So God wants us to
Yeah.
go to Him and pray to Him, which
Yeah.
again, the father of the Arabs is a man named Ishmael. So the head of the Jewish nation is Israel, and they have Yishmael, which means God hears. So for us, what that meant was in the end times, when we're under war with the Arabs, that we will, things will get so difficult that we will pray to God to save us, to get us out of this. And then that will be again the turn where everyone will start to understand that God is in charge.
And we covered this in the show last week when we were talking about Abraham and the promise that he was going to have a child. And then they got a little impatient, and Sarah was like, "Hurry up! I'm not getting any younger. So go knock up the servant girl." And that's where whole Ishmael comes in.
Hagar,
Hagar, that's right. Her name is Hagar. And we covered that.
yes,
So I don't want to rehash that again, but I do want to go back to something that you said earlier, and you mentioned, and I hear them say this like there's an exception. You said Islamic extremists. I don't
correct.
believe personally this will make a lot of people really angry at me, and I don't care because if you actually do any research and you read the Quran and you do a little studying on your own, you will see that that is the basis for their belief, period, is the eradication of anyone who's not them through
Correct.
violence, through death, through murder, through torture, through deceit, through lying.
Right.
It's all permitted. Muhammad said, "Yeah, take them all out," and Allah said it's good. As a matter of fact, say "Aloha snack bar" when you do it, and you'll get 72 Virginians. That's what I'm counting on them
Yes.
being, by the way, not virgins. I think they're going to get
Right.
72
Oh, right.
Virginians.
That'd be pretty good.
They're going to be
Well, you
really
know what's
disappointed.
interesting when they conquered Egypt, because again, Islam started in not Saudi Arabia, but Arabia, and basically, spread around the Middle East, and then spread to Northern Africa, spread out to Afghanistan, went into Europe. I mean, they conquered Spain. They were defeated by Charles Martel in France, and that's where it stopped there. And also in the Balkans, that's where it stopped. And so again, their uh, whole being was the normal way that nations work in this world. One nation conquers another, it conquers another. When you hear people saying, "Give the United States back to the Indians," or "Give this back," the British. Who are the British? The only real original British people at this point are the Welsh, and they don't know how far back they actually go, because the Celts who were there, all got driven out. So you had the Anglo-Saxons, which came from Germany and came from Europe. Okay, so then you had the Normans who came over from France. I mean, the Vikings who came in and pillaged. So all of the people you see today are a conglomeration of all these different people. So it's like,
Right.
so who do you give it back to? The French. The French people look and they go, "Oh, France," and I go, "Well, did you ever hear of Gaul?" And they go, "What?" They said, I have a lot of Gaul." I said, "No, no, no. I'm not talking to you." I said there was an area called Gaul, and if you read the history of Julius Caesar, he conquers Gaul, and he brings the king of Gaul back to Rome. They execute him, but eventually a tribe of people who were known as the Franks moved into that area, and they named it after themselves. And today we call it France.
You
So,
see, and you're telling me the history's boring. I love it, but most people don't delve into it like this. You're telling me
right.
things, and I thought I was. I'm not college educated. I don't have a degree in anything.
That's okay.
But I do like to read a lot, and I do like to study, and I do like to be. Here's my goal: to always be
Yes.
the most interesting person in the room, wherever I am.
Okay.
I want to be the
Yes.
most interesting person in the room. So I like to know a lot of stuff, and so I ask a lot of questions. But you're telling me things that nope, didn't know.
Wow. Yeah.
Did not know all this stuff. They're not teaching it in public education. Where'd you learn it?
I love to read. So in my whole life, I went to school in New York City and graduated there. But at the end of the day, I just enjoyed reading. So I used to read all this eclectic kind of stuff that I found very interesting. So to me, um, I don't know. It's a gift from above. I don't know why I like it. I just,
I was reading Louis L'Amour when I was a kid and Tom Clancy as an adult, so I didn't get a
oh,
lot of that. I
well,
didn't get a
no,
lot
that's
of that.
what makes the world go round. Is we're all different. We're all different.
Let's talk about, we know the basis, and the between, Jacob and Ishmael and all that.
That
Beginning
was Isaac. And that was Isaac.
excuse me, Isaac, right, I said Jacob, I'm sorry,
Right.
Isaac. And, how that began a rift between
Right.
2 people groups.
Two peoples.
Now,
Correct.
those of Arab descent were not Muslim then because Muhammad didn't come along until what, 400 years after Jesus?
Yes, it was
Um,
the 500s, if I'm correct. Five-
yeah.
Right. Yes.
Um, the point is, though, that kinda began the rift,
Yes.
and today we have, an entire people group despising, hating, murdering, doing everything they can to dismantle and destroy another entire people group.
Right. Well, they despise our Western culture without a question of a doubt.
Is
You
that
know,
what
it,
it is?
sure.
There seems to be more to it than that.
Well, I'm saying once you despise the culture, everything else has got to go.
Good point.
You know, for
And
example,
yeah, you're right, 'cause I mean, death to America, and America's the great Satan
right.
and all that, and,
Well, you got to remember their mentality is such where again they feel that they are the final religion, the last religion. You had Judaism, then you had Christianity, and then you had to them what they believe is the final ultimate religion, based on the other two religions, and that was the religion to follow, and they don't understand why no one else can see that, which is what I always found interesting because when you read everything in Judaism and then you read everything in Christianity, and how do you come away with, well, throw all that out, okay? Which again, the Christians didn't throw out Judaism, they built upon it. So basically, you look at it and you say, how could you look at that? But I read something interesting. I don't remember who it was, but when they took over Egypt, some of the scholars came over to them and they said, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "Well, we're lighting this fire." And they're like, "But you're burning the papyruses from the library in Alexandria. All of that knowledge that Alexander had gathered all over the world, he built this huge library in Alexandria, Egypt. And the Islamic army was burning all of that because they said, if it's not in the Quran, it doesn't mean anything. So if it's already in the Quran, what does it matter? We're burning it."
and this
I
is
mean,
what they do. Every time
yes,
they come in and take over a place, they eradicate all memory and all history.
right.
They
So I'm
destroy
saying,
statues, beautiful, invaluable works of art. They just annihilate them and destroy them. Don't care. They don't care.
no, again, it's again, as you and I talked about in India. I mean, everywhere there is, it becomes a very divisive and a separate type of situation. But again, we look at it and we're like, well, why can't we all just get along? And we don't understand the culture. And again, when I hear today, when someone says, "I hate you, I'm going to kill you," you have to believe them. So when I was getting ready for you and I to talk, I was reading a couple different things, and there was a gentleman that had gone through the Holocaust. And he had stated, he said, Britain says this, the Americans say that, this one says this. He goes, "You know who's the only one you can believe?" And the gentleman said, "No." He goes, "Hitler." He goes, "Hitler's the only one that I believe because Hitler said he was going to kill us, and that's what he did." So,
It's true. Completely true.
yeah.
He was a man of his
So when
word.
Hamas says we're going to come back and do it again, and we're going to come back and do it again, and then we're going to come back and do it again until you're all dead, and then you have, someone like Blinken who goes over there and he says, "Well, I have Jewish descendancy in my blood, and I feel how you guys feel, but," and it's always the proverbial but. You guys have to slow it down. You guys have to kind of back off a little bit, and they're thinking this is like 1948. We're fighting for our survival. If we don't get rid of them, they're going to just keep coming back. And I, for the life of me, can't understand how people sit there today and say, "Well, it's a little overdone." And I'm thinking, the killing of 1,200 people, torturing them. I mean, they
And
videotaped it themselves.
and still holding how many hundreds of them hostage and
Yeah.
raping them. I mean,
Yes.
this is going on. This is fun time for them. This is Disneyland for Hamas.
I'm going to tell you
Um,
something now, which is very disturbing. So I read today in an article from Israel. They're trying to figure out how they're going to cope if some of these women are pregnant.
well, if
They
she's past her point to where they feel they're attracted to her anymore, they will and apologies in advance if this is going to
right.
be so appalling to you that you're going to tune out, but so be it. They will carve that baby out of her womb while they are both alive. They
Well,
will
these
hold
could
that
be
baby
people
in
that are
front of
back
her
in
while
Israel.
she's dying, and they will saw off its head. They will
Mm.
cut off its head, and that's usually how they do it, by the way, is with a saw. Not like you think with a nice little clean guillotine.
No, they did
That
one
is
of the
the
kids with
reality
a
of what these
shovel.
animals are doing
They decapitated children with shovels on October 7th.
in front of their mothers,
Yes.
in front of their fathers, in front of their siblings, in front of I,
And again, someone said this, which I thought was interesting. So, here in New York, they've been ripping down the posters that they have of
the
the
lost
children,
children.
and people, and everyone,
Yep.
everyone who was taken hostage, and people are ripping it down, and they're ripping it down in London, and the gentleman said, he goes, "You wouldn't do that if it was a dog, like lost dog. If you find this dog, please, you wouldn't rip that poster down. How could you rip a poster down of a child that was taken hostage against its will, or a woman, or a man, or anyone else? How could you rip that down?" And again, they sit there and they go, "Well, they deserve it. They're oppressors." And this is what they're being taught in school here in the United States. They look at us and they say, "Well, the white man came here and did all this." And I'm thinking, do you know the Indians fought each other constantly? The Indians were cannibals in certain instances. They went to war. For example, my wife is part Sioux Indian. The Sioux were pushed out of different areas. They had moved from Minnesota. They were pushed out, and they wound up in the Great Plains. I mean, these weren't. And again, I'm not saying they weren't great people, but they were people. And this is what man does. Man's inhumanity to
They
man.
were awful to each other, warring
Yes,
tribes, stealing, other tribe members, making them slaves, raping,
lots of
um,
slaves, lots of slavery.
slavery.
I mean, Kawana Parker, his mother was white, and
Time right here.
she was captured, and they had a child, Kawana Parker. I mean, it's an amazing story for the anybody who's into the Old West, U.S. West.
So when I hear and I'm a big fan of that history, but when you hear, people talking about the radical Islamists, in a way, if you're showing up at your mosque and you're tithing, you're giving money there, that imam who heads up that mosque, that pastor, is taking that money, a good portion of it, and sending it to the Muslim Brotherhood, sending
Correct.
it to Hamas, sending it to Qatar, sending it to these different organizations that are doing their jihad for them. If you're not actually fighting, if you're not taking up arms, you're praying for all of us to be murdered, and you are giving money to make it happen. That is reality of what's going on. You might not, and you might think, well, it is a religion of peace, and I'm just going there. And yes, I give money, but I don't know where it's going.
I don't believe that.
I don't buy that at all. I
I
think they
don't
know
believe that.
exactly where it's going.
No, again, you look at the Saudi flag and there's a sword on it for a reason.
Yeah.
The American flag has stars and stripes. I mean, basically it's a symbol of who we are and who they are. And again, we have to take it seriously that again, their mentality is a different mentality than ours.
And every time I hear another Christian go, "Well, I work with a Muslim, or my neighbor is Muslim, and they're such nice people." Fantastic. They sure are when they're not in a position of power and forcing you to comply with Sharia law, which will happen.
Well, I have to tell you something. There were over 2 million Arabs. You can call them quote unquote Palestinian, but Arabs that live in Israel. There's one on the Supreme Court there. There are what they're known as Druze, Druze. A lot of them are in the army, and one of the things again they do not discuss here, which I don't understand. I have to try to find out how I could work for the Israeli government because they need better publicity. Why aren't these people coming forward and saying, you're saying this is an apartheid state? They don't even know what apartheid means. Apartheid was when the blacks were put in slums and ghettos, and the white people lived over here, okay, because you had the Boers, who used to be the Dutch, and then you had the British. So you had two peoples, but apart. In Israel, the Arabs live with the Jews
Right there. Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, the people that are not in Israel itself, like the Bedouin, are all Muslim. They're Arabs. They're in the army. Okay. Again, all of these people are in the army. They're not separate. The West Bank and Gaza, they are separate. For what reason? Again, the Gaza Strip, just real quick history. Gaza Strip was part of Egypt after the 6-Day War, and they conquered the Sinai Peninsula. They controlled also the Gaza Strip. So what happened was when they gave back during the peace accords with Sadat, they gave Egypt back to Sinai, and they said, take back Gaza. And the Egyptians said, we don't want it. You keep it. So the Jews wound up keeping it. They put settlers there. They were trying to build it again, an economy there. It's right on the Mediterranean. It's on the Mediterranean like Greece. It's on the Mediterranean like Monaco. It's on the Mediterranean. I mean, it's beautiful. So make it into a paradise. You have all the opportunity. You have the coastline. So then basically that didn't work. So Sharon in 2005 pulled all the settlers out. They left all the agriculture. They left the farms. And then within a year, Hamas was voted in. Now, again, they were voted in by the Gazan people. So it wasn't like somebody came from a boat and said, we're taking you over. These were people who were there. And they killed the Fatah people. They killed, the people who were PLO, because they took over for the PLO, and they killed, whoever they felt was in their way. And they've run the Gaza Strip ever since then. So there is no Jews there. Now, the other thing I thought was interesting from you and I speaking was, whenever Israel gives something back, the first thing is they don't want any Jews there. So when they talk about 1948 and they say, oh, the Jews colonized and they threw out all these Arabs, you can go online now. In Iraq, they kicked out all the Jews. In Algeria, they kicked out all the Jews. In Egypt, they kicked out all the Jews. Every country, Syria, they have all the numbers. And where did those Jews go? They went to Israel. So if you go, for example, today and you go to a lot of these Arab countries, there's 2 or 3 Jews. There used to be a big Jewish community in Yemen. I think there's only 2 Jews in the entire country at this point, if they're still there.
You're making a very, very good point.
So in other words, you had, again, a swapping out of people. Now, again, and the people who were in the land at that time, the other Arab nations said, listen, get out of the way. Leave your village. We're going to come in. And this is, again, a historical fact. You can look it up. They said 5 nations attacked Israel as soon as they announced they were, their independence. They said, get out of the way, get over here, because we don't want to kill you as we kill all the Jews. Then what we're going to do is we're going to kill all the Jews, and then you can go back and, you can take your house and take their house too. But unfortunately for them, they lost. And that was, again, the hand of God, how a small group of people were able to defeat 5 nations that were attacking them. And basically, so you had what was created, refugee camps. And let's expand on that for a few minutes. You keep your eye on the clock. So now you have a group of people that are refugees. Now, we touched upon this last time. Israel was also created not just by God, but again, voted on at the United Nations and was granted independence by the UN. Okay, so again, they were there during the British mandate. The British wanted nothing to do with it. And then it went to the UN, and the UN basically partitioned everything off. They gave a certain amount to the Arabs, and they gave a certain amount to the Jews, and then basically voted on it. And then the Jews said, okay, we'll take whatever you give us. And the Arabs are like, no, you can't be here. We're going to kill you all. So they didn't win. The Jews won. The state of Israel, of course, thank you, God, is there, 1948. So the people who were displaced, the Arabs, they put them in refugee camps. Again, all the Jews that were in Libya, Algeria, Yemen, Jordan, Iraq, they all basically went to Israel. Some, of course, wound up coming to Europe or whatever. So now you have the Arabs would not allow the Palestinians, whoever was in these refugee camps, to leave the camps. So you still have refugee camps in Lebanon, right? You still have refugee camps in Syria. You still have refugee camps in Jordan. This is 75 years later. That's like 3-4 generations of people that are refugees. Now, when they went to the land of Israel, they became Israeli citizens. If we take people in here, they go for citizenship and then they're allowed to be citizens, but Palestinians are not. And they're controlled by an organization from the United Nations called UNRWA. Now, UNRWA, if you look, they're the ones supplying the food, the teaching, all of this money is going towards these Palestinian refugees. Now, the interesting thing about UNRWA is that is the only people that you're allowed to pass down your refugee status to your children and your grandchildren.
What?
They are allowed to say that they are refugees. And again, once you give birth, then you can pass down.
We're going to play the whole victim role, and we're going to pass it along to our kids.
Now, look at it this way. Look at Yemen, for example, today. Yemen is the poorest Arab country in the world. Okay, Yemen is the poorest Arab country in the world. But again, the Houthis are Shia, so they're aligned with Iran. They've attacked Saudi Arabia. Remember, they flew drones in, they blew up some oil plants, there's some oil refineries. Now, they're on the same peninsula. They're on the Arabian Peninsula. How can they be poor when you have Qatar, you have the Arab Emirates, you have
the wealthiest in the world?
Wealthiest, right. And right next door, you're letting your brothers starve to death.
But yet they all say that they're part of the Muslim Brotherhood. What a load of crap. This is a wicked cult. It is a cult. I don't care what color their skin is. That has nothing to do with it. And trust me on this, that has nothing to do with it. I'm going to stand up to a wicked cult like this, which has fooled so many people in the world into believing they're a religion of peace. When President George W. Bush actually said that, that was the beginning of the end for me. I couldn't believe that he said that, especially considering 9/11 and all this that happened, and they're trying to make nice, and it's all comes down to money. This is what's driving, and the love of money is the root of all evil.
Correct.
And this is a cult. It's not a religion. It's a form of government. They come in and they force you to live by their Sharia law, and that's that. And Stuart made an excellent point when you were saying when all these people were becoming refugees and they didn't have a homeland, the Jewish people were told, or excuse me, my apology, take that back, backtrack. You're talking about the Islam takes over an entire nation, and they do it the way they're doing it everywhere. We see how they do it. That's all they've done. They come in, they take over the government, they work their way in, they worm their way in, they start controlling and killing, assassinating, and then they work their way into ultimate power. And then what's the first thing they do? All Jews get out.
Correct. Yep.
But yet, here's the nation of Israel, which is a Jewish nation. But there's no law saying you're not going to live in these borders unless you're a Jew.
Correct.
Not at all. And there's never even talk about that. They could easily do that, but they're not, because they're not that way. This is a cult religion. So whenever I talk about what's in there, I'm reading out of their own Quran, and I get banned. I get censored. I get shut down. I get criticized by my own fellow Christians, telling me I'm Islamophobic. Well, first of all, phobic means fear. I'm not afraid of Islam. It's a cult. I stand up to cults. I stand against them, especially if their whole book, their Bible says, kill them where you find them. Kill them when you can. Get rid of them unless they convert. Yeah. No, 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 no. I'm not going to support that. And I'm not going to sit there and I'm going to go, well, they're basically good people. For now, what are they going to be when they're in control? You get out. You conform, you comply, or you get out. Or even better, we'll lop your head off because that's kind of like their thing.
Well, what they used to do was, again, if you were a Jew and you lived in an Arab land, let's say 300 years ago, 400 years ago, you had to pay a tax to be privileged to be able to live there. And
Okay.
again, as you know, in Saudi Arabia, no Jews or Christians are allowed.
Right.
So how does that make any sense? As people are starting to wake up a little bit, like I hear people talking and they're like, well, why are the Arabs running away from their dictators in the Middle East and coming to England or the United States, and then they do the same thing that was done to them?
Right. Right.
Same thing, and they start dictating how you should be and what you
Sharia
should
law.
wear, and
Sharia law.
correct.
Sharia law.
Well, they believe
Um,
it's
we
they
have
believe.
been on for 46 minutes, my friend. I think we should probably do round two if you want to. Next week, we'll do a part four.
Hey, I look forward to Charlie anytime.
All right, my friend. I really am enjoying this a lot, and I'm learning things every single week. And I hope you are as well. I hope you watch it because most people, oh, it's history. Click.
Right.
And you're missing. If you don't know history and you don't learn from it, you're doomed to repeat it.
Correct. If you don't know
So,
where you were, you won't know where you're going.
yeah, very good. This is
There you go.
Stuart Leviton. If anybody has any questions for you, wants to get involved, wants to know how to follow you or anything at all, how do we do it?
Oh, we just get in touch with you, Charlie.
No,
That's
don't send them to me. Send them to you. What do you want?
all right. There you go. Well, that's the way we'll do it for now.
Okay. All right.
God bless,
Uh,
my friend. You have a wonderful evening.
thank you, sir. And remember, he's in New York area. He's in
Cold New York, snowy New York.
yeah, New York's. And there's a lot of oppression and a lot of violence and protesting going on right there as they
Correct.
all hit the streets, most of them being paid to protest against a nation that has said that's enough, we're going to defend ourselves.
That's it.
Thank you, my brother. Talk to you later. Have a good night.
Have a wonderful night. Take care,
You
Charlie.
too. You too. I'm Charlie Simons. This is Do Not Talk. Find me at rumble.com/do not talk. That's rumble.com/do not talk. Please subscribe to that channel while you're there. You'd be helping us grow. You can also help us grow by buying some of our products. We got this awesome shirt right here, God Family Country. It's thick, it's soft, the collar stays up where it's supposed to. And this mug, nice big old 15-ounce coffee mug, whatever you want to put in it. And it's Do Not Talk, talking about two things you're never supposed to talk about, religion and politics. So may God oh, by the way, sorry, you find that at do-not-talk.com. That's the website. Click on store when you get there. Do-not-talk.com. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America, but most importantly, may America bless God. Man, that's